Donald Trump is facing new allegations of racism after a former employee of his claims that he was forced to leave the hotel that he was working at because he was black when Donald Trump and his wife would visit. Now, this is according to an article published in The New Yorker by journalist Nick Baumgarten. And apparently he spoke to a man by the name of Kip Brown who worked at one of Donald Trump's casinos. According to Baumgarten, Brown also used to work in the casinos, at the Showboat, bussing tables, and at Trump's castle, stripping and waxing floors. When Donald and Ivana came to the casino, the bosses would order all the black people off the floor. It was in the 80s. I was a teenager, but I remember it. And he also says they put us all in the back.
You know, the charge is so shocking that you wonder, could it possibly be true? First of all, The New Yorker is incredibly reputable, right? They're not going to make this up, right? Second of all, this guy has no motivation, and I like how he gives his bona fides, basically, saying, like, look, this is a guy who, you know, worked in this industry for a long time, well-respected, et cetera. He has no incentive to make it up. And then if you look further, and you want to be, is this generous to Trump? I don't know. I'll let you decide, right? And so it's not necessarily, and I want you to understand the context of why it might have happened. Not necessarily that Donald Trump says to people that work beneath him, I hate black people, I never want to see them. My wife hates black people, she never wants to see them. I would be further shocked if that were the case. More likely, he lets it be known, hey, you know what, I want my casinos, this is the coded language they would use, to be high-end, okay? So and certain clientele are not high-end. Now, the reality is when Donald Trump is sitting in Manhattan for most of the time, yeah, people that go to casinos are sometimes white, they're sometimes black, Latino, and they're a mix, right? And people who work there are a mix, et cetera. But when Trump is going to come into town, he's surrounded by yes men. Remember, his whole life, yes, sir, Donald Trump, you are fantastic. You're the greatest person that ever lived. So if Donald Trump doesn't want to see black people because he thinks it's not high class, everybody underneath him will scurry to, like, get rid of the black people on the floor, so that when he comes, we'll be like, you see that, Mr. Trump? Just like we told you, we delivered high-end clientele for you.
Yeah, it really depends on whether you believe that Trump overtly asked for this to happen, or if the language that he uses toward minorities and the poor convinces people working under him to do certain things without him asking ahead of time. So I don't know exactly how this worked out or how this played out in the 80s, and I don't know how real these accusations are, but this is a former employee of his who is just sharing his own experiences. What I do know is that Trump is very clear about his disdain toward minorities and poor people, right? And that kind of language definitely resonates toward people who want to please him. So if you know that he's not going to be in favor of seeing certain people around, then maybe you would hide black people or minorities. I don't know. I don't know how it all played out. But Trump doesn't hide the fact that he hates certain groups of people. He's very transparent about it. In fact, he's climbing up the polls as a result of it.
And this is in the year 2015 when he says Mexicans coming into this country are criminals and rapists, by and large. This is when he says President Obama, I don't know if he was born in this country, even though he has every birth certificate in the world saying he's from Hawaii. There's no reason to suspect it whatsoever, except look at him, he's the other, right? And then he says, oh, Obama, did he really get good grades at Columbia? He finds it inconceivable. Why would you find it inconceivable? The guy's the president of the United States, obviously very accomplished, the U.S. senator before that. Why would you find it inconceivable? It's very obvious why you find it inconceivable. And these are all 2012, 2015. Imagine what Donald Trump was like and what his requests were back in the 1980s,
right?
Which is when this is happening, right? And so, look, all this, so that's an outrageous story. And some dude's not going to come up out of nowhere, some bus driver, and be like, all right, I'll invent a story of how we used to, be back in the day in the Trump casinos. Okay. But even if you're not particularly outraged by that, or you think, hey, that was a long time ago and that's how things go, his attitude towards minorities has real effect. When the rape happened in Central Park, also in the 1980s, a woman raped by a group of people. They accused these 5 kids who happened to be black. Turns out they were wrong. Doesn't matter. They convicted them anyway. They served their full sentences. Donald Trump took out a full-page ad demanding that they go after them harsher, that they give them the full brunt of the law, etc. Now, that's horrible because it turns out they didn't do it, right? And they spent all that time. Those guys should be owed millions, if not billions of dollars by Donald Trump, by the way, for creating that demagoguery. And they're the black kids, they're the ones who did it. They're the ones who did it. Grab those guys. Now, what's amazing is after all those years, when we find out it turns out they didn't do it, the authorities say, oh my God, we're so sorry. It wasn't them, it was some other people, right? Donald Trump takes out another ad saying, I don't care, it was still them.
He's amazing. I mean, it's incredible how hateful he is and how much people bask in that hateful attitude. People love it. And that's the worst part about it. Look, there are, of course, hateful people in the country, and you have to accept that. But when you see someone rise in popularity as a result of his hatred and as a result of his rhetoric toward, Black people, Mexicans, minorities, poor people, it's sad, it's depressing. And this is someone who's running for president of the United States, and he has all this support.
Don't make the mistake of thinking, hey, you know what? He just doesn't like illegal immigrants. No. He's got issues against many different kinds of minorities. He's had them his whole life. And it's not as simple as he hates them, right? Because a lot of people view it, well, funny enough, as a black and white issue. Like, if he's racist, he hates them. If he's not racist, then he doesn't hate them. No. It's how you react to people based on your assumptions. His assumption based on this story, and I know we're reading a little bit into the casino story, right? But it appears that he thinks, at best case scenario, black people are not high-end clientele. I don't want them in my casino, right? The worst case scenario is I don't want to see black people. I don't want to see black people. Okay, so for whatever reason that decision is made. But if you want to, like I said, get rid of that, don't even talk about it, okay, talk about the so-called Central Park rapists, right? Yeah. The Central Park Five, right? So with those guys, he's unrepentant, and he views them as they must have done it. I mean, why all of these assumptions, one after another after another? If you still think, no, Donald Trump's a lovely guy, he wouldn't have anything against black people or any minorities, you want to have that opinion. And there's something in you that thinks like, well, I kind of have that opinion too, and I don't want that being called racist. So I'm going to step up here and defend Donald Trump. So, look, you didn't take out an ad, a full-page ad in the papers accusing black people of doing something they didn't do. You didn't have them sit in jail for decades. But if you think like, go get them on that, even though you know that they're innocent, well then yes, there is something wrong with you. Okay, so this guy is no friend of minorities, and it would be a disaster for this country if he were president.